before they go out.
I mean, the
And
thing is, it's so.
in a rising interest rate environment,
Yeah.
They earn a penny and
Well,
they
well,
hold it.
It's probably, I don't, it's a good question. Because they have to do a lot of reconciliations and double checking, and you know, there's systems that do that, and you know.
But I'm just wondering if just,
Something-
if there's an opportunity there, but might not be, it might just be too.
They did a big announcement this week on the online gaming. Coming to see that. It was something like it reached $500 million in the first, yeah, it's a big. I think.
And where's that money supposed to go?
Yeah.
Well,
Spread out over the school district.
I know, but
Yeah,
a better way to
follow the money.
a better way to make a buck in gaming.
I know. And you knew this was going to happen. I mean, this
It's
is like.
so.
We saw that.
Good morning. Jesse and Chris, can you hear us?
Of course, you know.
All right, you're moving.
Sound check, you guys, everybody okay up there in the Albany office? Wave if you can hear us.
Jesse, can you say something though, because we can't hear
All
you?
right, let's see.
Can you hear us?
Right. The last drop of oil.
Can you hear us?
Hi, Chris and Jesse, sound check. Can you guys hear us all right?
Can you hear us?
No, there, I think we can hear them, but very quietly, maybe.
We can hear you. Can you hear
We
us?
can hear you, but very quiet.
Okay.
Turn up the volume.
Up volume.
Hello.
There we go. Perfect.
That's good. That's good.
Okay, wonderful. And Syracuse?
We don't.
Do we have B? There's no one there. Okay. And then Stacy Mickle, can you hear us?
Should we have?
Yes, can you hear us?
Great,
Yes,
thank you.
excellent. Can we see them? Oh, there we go. So we can only see one of them?
Yeah.
They're in a little box.
They're in a little box, but when
Oh,
they
wow.
speak, they pop up.
Okay.
It's not
See
the
the boxes at
I
the
couldn't
bottom?
see that before.
Where-
And what about the audience here? Can you guys hear us?
Yeah,
We lowered the.
Betsy will take care of that. And their speakers, see the speakers? So.
But before you couldn't hear that.
Oh, well, that's.
Oh.
Does it matter which computer switch?
No.
I don't think so. I think they're just.
Okay.
This one-
We're redoing, we're doing October again.
That's right.
Play that back. It was a lot of fun.
You're switching.
You can just switch over, James.
I could, but I like
He
Russ.
wants to sit.
All right.
He wants to
Next
sit
to Wallace.
next to the professor.
All right.
All right, I think we can get started. Good morning, everybody, wherever you are, Albany, here in New York City, and any other remote locations? Alex, I don't think
That's
so.
it.
Great. Thanks for your patience when we get the sound and everything all set up. Without further ado, I'm pleased to turn the proceedings over to Diana Lopez, our, I can say sort of still relatively new general counsel.
Absolutely.
Who's going to channel her, to do her best imitation of Alex today and take over.
Just for the record, Alex is unique. There's no possibility of doing imitation. I will be myself.
Fair.
I note that Jesse Olazek, representing the Director of the Division of the Budget, and Christopher Curtis, representing the Commissioner of Taxation and Finance, are participating in the meeting via video conference from New York State Division of Budget Conference Center at the Capitol Building, Room 131 in Albany. Notice of this location has been made public, and the public has the right to attend and observe the proceedings from that location. I will ask for motions and seconds to call to order the November 10, 2022 meetings of the agencies and committees. I ask for a motion for HFA, HTFC, and AHC. Second, I will ask for individual votes from each board member to open the HFA, HTFC, and AHC meetings. I ask for a motion for SONYMA.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
I will now ask for individual votes from each board members to open the SONYMA meeting.
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Freeman? Oh,
Wallace.
Yes, Wallace Ford, yes. Aye.
okay, here.
Aye. Do we have everybody?
Ruth Ann
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
and Jesse.
Yeah, he already did it. Okay. I ask for a motion for the Mortgage Insurance Committee.
So moved.
Second? There's a second?
Ruth Ann?
Second.
Okay. I will now ask for individual votes from each committee member to open the Mortgage Insurance Committee meeting.
So that's just Ken.
Aye.
Okay.
Ruth Ann?
And
Second.
Second.
Jesse.
and Jesse. Okay.
Jesse?
I ask for a motion for the HFA Finance and Program Committee.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I will now ask for individual votes from each Finance and Program Committee member.
Aye.
Ruth Ann and Jesse.
And Jesse,
Aye.
great. Okay.
I think we forgot
You
HFA.
have to do HF, the first one, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip H? Oh,
Yep.
excuse me. Thank you for keeping me on. I ask for motion for HFA. Second?
Second.
Okay, this is for HFA, HTFC,
Yeah,
and
you can do
HC
that all.
collectively.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, collectively,
great.
right.
Okay. I'll now ask for individual votes for each board member to open the HFA, HTFC, and HC meetings.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
As items are presented to each board and committee throughout today's meetings, these motions and seconds will be used unless specific items call for a different vote, or unless any board member or director wishes to report his or her vote differently. The meetings of the various boards and of the committees are officially open.
Great. Well, now that we're open for business, let's go to Ruth Ann for her monthly president's report.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Good morning, everybody. I would like to start my remarks by congratulating our Governor, Kathy Hochul, on becoming the first woman elected in our state's history as governor. It's very exciting. It's been, it has been incredibly energizing to work under her over the past year and to be launching another housing plan under her leadership and continuing to work with her team on new strategies to increase housing across the state. So it has been wonderful for HCR that she has been prioritizing affordable housing in her campaign talking points. As many of us obviously read in the newspaper, it's not lost on us that this is an issue that's impacting every single New Yorker. As she said in her election speech, on her victory speech on Tuesday night, this was really a lesson for all of us to work forward and improve the lives of New Yorkers, and I'm certainly proud to be part of that in this. I would also say that we lost in the election Steve Simbowitz, who is the chair of the Assembly Housing Committee. He was certainly a great ally for HCR and supported all the work that we did. So we're sad to see him go, and hopefully we have a good relationship with the next incoming chairperson. Looking at the board today, we have several items for consideration, bringing new housing investments to Buffalo, Rochester, the Finger Lakes, and New York City. Importantly, two projects on our agenda are senior housing developments. And while we all understand the value of providing housing that's affordable and stable and offers access to healthcare and to other services, there was a recent article in the New York Times reflecting a troubling trend among senior citizens, which is that the poverty rate for those that are 65 or older has increased, and the long-term projections indicate that this issue is worsening. So it's too many seniors really are financially stretched thin, and the problem is getting worse, whether they've lost their jobs or their Social Security or retirement income isn't keeping pace with rising costs, or whatever the issue, it is a big one. And so investments like the one that we're going to talk about today are really crucial. In addition to that, we are going to bring 54 housing and infrastructure projects through our CDBG annual competitive funding rounds. As you all know, CDBG is a federally funded program that's administered by HCR, and it helps counties and towns and villages across the state that have populations of 50,000 or under make investments in those communities, housing or otherwise, for low and moderate income families. 30 of the projects today represent $23 million in public water, public sewer, public facility projects, and community planning projects, and Crystal will talk us through those. The balance of them are for housing rehab, manufactured housing, and well and septic projects that benefit low and moderate income households. So we're really excited about those, and you'll hear a little more about them later. We're also going to bring $5.3 million in New York Main Street awards for 23 projects. So Main Street is a program that's been around for a while. It's incredibly important to localities. It allows them to invest in their mixed-use neighborhoods and commercial districts through both technical assistance as well as things like facade renovations, interior building upgrades, and streetscape enhancements. So those will be really great. I would mention, just in the world of programs that Crystal runs, I had the privilege of going to Troy. I can't remember if it was this week or last week, but sometime in the last week, where we made a $5 million investment in a new community facility that's going to serve low-income individuals and families in the city of Troy, and is a project that really was an example of without which the CDBG investment that we were making, the building would not get built. So it was really exciting, and the mayor of Troy was incredibly appreciative of our commitment there. Lastly, just for the SONYMA board members, I wanted to mention that today we are going to be purchasing a pool of 99 non-performing loans from Fannie Mae. couple years ago, maybe 6 or so years ago, we started the Community Reinvestment Fund, a SONYMA CRF, and we have been acquiring non-performing residential mortgage loans to delinquent borrowers, and then we give them modifications or other sort of soft landings, depending on what's sort of needed. It's been a really great program for us. We've helped so many distressed homeowners through it, and the SONYMA board approved that quite a while ago, and you'll see today. I think is this coming to the board? I forget if this is coming to the board or not, but it's really an incredible program that we continue to help distressed homeowners across the state. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Ken.
Ruth Ann, thank you. Any questions for Ruth Ann on her report?
Yes, and thank you for the report, certainly. It just occurred to me with these non-performing loans, are there ever occasions where we ultimately foreclose?
So when we buy non-performing loans from Fannie Mae or from other lenders, there's generally 3 outcomes. So we are either doing a loan modification with the owner. We are doing what we would call sort of a soft landing. So maybe a deed in lieu where they give the keys back because it was just a house that they frankly can't afford, no matter what the loan gets modded to, and they really want to be a renter, or they just need a smaller, different, whatever. So we have sort of what we call kind of a soft landing bucket. And then there are houses where we do foreclose. That's either where the owner is no longer there. There could be a squatter where there's no owner. We're not generally foreclosing on homeowners.
That was my question, of course.
We just foreclose to extinguish and then then we take the home and we work with a nonprofit who then sells it to an income eligible buyer. So, but we do have sort of those 3 outcomes in the pool. And generally where we thought we were going to be kind of a third, because you have to buy the whole pool, right? You don't always know what you get. We have had much better outcomes, I think, than we anticipated going in. So I've been happy to provide more of an update on that at some point, but it's been
I appreciate that.
successful initiative for us.
Great. Good question, Wallace. Thank you. Let's welcome Director Miller, Joyce Miller. Nice to have you here. Thank you.
Good morning.
Glad to have you here, as always. And so, Ruth Ann, thanks for that report. We're going to move on to HFA, AHC, and SONYMA items. Again, they're kind of blended together, as folks are getting used to. Item 1 is the approval of the minutes of the October meeting. That was October 13th, 2022. Those minutes shall be deemed approved, absent corrections from members and directors. Any comments on the minutes? All right. Item 2, resolution approving senior officer compensation adjustments. Those are called raises. And Betsy's going to present this item. Again, it's in the board book as item 2.
Good morning. Can you hear me on the video? Yeah, okay, great. Good morning. As the chairman said, I'm here this morning to present the 2% compensation increases for senior officers. For those that are new, I might take a second to just provide a little background if helpful.
Good idea.
Okay, we have about 275 employees on the AHC, HFA, SONYMA payroll. About 200 of those are in the UAW union, and the remainder are management confidential, or MC. So we're talking today about just the senior officers for MC. In 2005, as you read in the memo, the governance committee of the board adopted policies and procedures governing the review and determination of employee compensation. They provide that the president and CEO should make recommendations on senior officers, and that the chair should make the recommendation on the CEO, so I'm presenting on both of their behalves. They also provide a range within which the senior officer's salary should fall, and the recommendations we're making today fall within that range. As a quick note, the non-senior MC individuals at the agency will also be receiving compensation adjustments, but they don't require board action, and they'll come to the governance committee in December. So, in compliance with the Division of Budget's bulletin set out in July, the raises that you see stipulated 2% general salary increase for the state fiscal year 22 and 23, retroactive to April 1st of 21 and March 31st of 22. So these are for the last 2 years, retroactive 2% increases.
That's a sorry question. So that means that former employees who worked during the retroactive period, probably to their surprise, will open the mailbox and get a check.
Correct.
Okay.
And those are, as you see in they'll get a check for the dates of service that they were here.
Right.
So it's all prorated
Exactly.
to those days. Yeah. And those are marked with asterisks, plural asterisks. by an asterisk.
Asterisk I.
Asterisk I, thank you.
No, I'm kidding.
There, you can see who those are in the.
Materials.
So I'm here to ask for your approval of the 2% increases. Any questions? Other questions?
Lump sum payments? One big
Yes,
check?
they will go out, yes, they will go out as, Daryl, correct me if I'm wrong, they will go as lump sum payments in, on the 23rd.
So they'll get a-
Time for Thanksgiving, great.
Just in time for the holiday.
That's right.
So, can we, or do we, when should we anticipate there'll be another round of increases, just in this same process?
They tend to happen annually.
Annually? Okay.
But as you can see
Yeah,
here, we're
right.
making up for time that where
I
there wasn't.
understand. So we'll, going forward, we'll try to keep this in a timely fashion, and so that we don't have to do it retroactively, is my point.
That's not our decision.
Okay.
It's based on the Division of Budgets bulletin, so they
I see.
govern across the
And
entire.
Betsy, I can jump in here. Yeah, this is consistent with basically the pay bill that was enacted by the legislature recently as it relates to management and confidential employees. So these raises are in line with what all management and confidential employees are receiving in state service. So that's also the reason for the delay. It is not anything that sort of HCR did. It was just sort of as the state sort of comes to agreement on different things, the HCR follows the same pattern. So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, great. Any other questions for Betsy?
I have vote.
I think you should
I
probably
was
abstain.
there during this period.
So James was here during the period. You were a VP, so as Betsy says, your raise would come, it would come naturally. It's not affected by the vote, but if you wanted to, we have enough if you wanted.
Yes, I.
If you want to abstain, Joyce is here, so we're covered, right?
Yep,
Yep.
we're covered.
The other
Your,
question?
yeah, your abstention's noted.
Thank you. If there are no further questions for Betsy, let's turn to Diana to make this real.
Okay, now before the SONYMA, HFA, and AHC boards for approval is a resolution of the State of New York Mortgage Agency, the New York State Housing Finance Agency, and the Affordable Housing Corporation authorizing senior officers' compensation adjustments. Assuming the first and second previously entered for all three boards, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution is adopted.
Great. Thanks, Betsy. Thanks, everybody. Now we move to items requiring an item requiring Mortgage Insurance Committee, HFA Finance and Program Committee, and HFA members' action. It's number 3. And Part A, resolution of the SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $6,400,000 HFA permanent first mortgage loan for a project called Marketplace Senior Apartments up in Henrietta in Monroe County, suburb of Rochester. And B is related to this, so we have both of you here, thank you. Resolutions of the HFA Finance and Program Committee, HFA members recommending and authorizing the financing approval of a $29 million of maximum fixed rate and/or variable rate, tax exempt or taxable bonds, an amount not to exceed $16,405,000 in HFA subsidy funds, and there's more, $825,000 in NYSERDA Clean Energy Initiative funds. That's for Joyce. For the Marketplace Senior Apartments project in Henrietta, Monroe County. So Mike's going to start, and we'll continue.
So Marketplace Senior Apartments comprises the construction of 150 all low-income senior units, including 45 supportive housing units, which will receive rent and supportive service subsidies pursuant to a contract between Catholic Family Center and the New York State Department of Health. There will also be 75 units covered under 2 project-based Section 8 HAP contracts. This is a somewhat unusual project in that it's on a ground lease. There's a 45-year ground lease with a 6-year renewal option at the option of the tenant. The insured loan amount is $43,000 per unit, which equals 12% of the project's total development cost of $343,000 per unit. The project would break even with a pro forma 13% vacancy rate or a 13% increase in operating expenses. It's being developed by the Cornerstone Group, which has developed over 1,400 and 50 affordable units. And this will be the fourth loan that we've insured for entities controlled by Cornerstone with liability of only $23 million.
Mike, thank you. Julie is here to talk about the project. Why don't you bring us up to date? Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm here to present Marketplace Senior Apartments. It is located in the town of Henrietta in Monroe County. This project is unique and interesting in a number of aspects. First, it is 100% affordable senior housing, and there's a lot of Section 8 in here, which is very important. As we know, as folks age, they tend to become poorer and have lower incomes. So having the Section 8 here really ensures that housing is truly affordable to those who are perhaps living on fixed incomes and will remain that way. It's also interesting in that this is the redevelopment of the old mall. So this is a challenge that many suburban communities face. When the new mall comes in, what do you do with the old mall? Many are looking to redesign them as senior-centered type developments that include housing and other uses, and this is an example of such. So the site itself was formerly a mall movie theater and now is going to be transformed into 150 units of housing for low-income seniors. This includes 45 units that will be supported by our eShy program for frail elderly under contract with the Department of Health. It is also a good example of for-profit, not-for-profit partnership in our pipeline. The developer is Rochester Cornerstone and Genesis, with the Catholic Family Center providing services. All experienced developers and providers under state programs. We're excited that we're starting to use our CEI, our Climate Energy Initiative funding through NYSERDA. So this project is designed to those standards. And, I should also note that, I was looking through all of my staff's notes, and one thing very notable, there's only been 100 affordable units in the past 10 years in this market area developed. Wow. So it's exciting that we're reaching a place that clearly has need and limited supply. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this project.
Anybody remember Win Coram? Is that the name of the project in Coram, Long Island?
Very well.
You know the project, right? And so that's an abandoned multiplex. I mean, it's a big shopping center, but it was these big old movie theaters in Coram. So this is at least the second one. And it's just interesting because, especially coming out of pandemic, not all those, multiplexes have survived. Think Regal, think this one, think that one. And it's a lot of real estate. So I just think, so that's the angle here when you said that, Julie. A lot of good things about this project, but the recycling of an abandoned movie theater adjacent to a shopping center is, a model, right? And we've seen it, like I said, in Coram. Questions, comments for Julie or Mike about the project, both mortgage insurance and then the loan itself, or the subsidy funds?
Just a real quick thing. How do you think like these mall conversions, like for seniors, like looking at the diagram, how will that impact their quality of life? Like in terms of like, is there walkability? Is there outdoor space? Are there things that they need that in terms of like, just looking physically at what it looks like, how do you think that this environment will fit into like the larger like senior community?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, this one's actually quite well located, and some of these older malls are, right, because they were sort of the center of commercial life in sort of the older suburbs. So this one in particular has a lot of good public transit access. 0.2 miles was the measurement on the map to the nearest public bus, and actually, and also I'm seeing here too that they're going to be creating a new bus stop for this specific site pursuant to this development, so that helps. And I think also, as part of the development that's so focused on aging residents, there are complementary services that we're not necessarily developing but are part of the larger thinking around creating campus-like environments.
Good, thanks, James. Anybody else?
Is it based on a land use plan or a city planning model? Because I asked that because the Win Coram one, it was built like a TOD type model, and more than half of that building is still vacant as far as businesses.
The commercial part, right?
The commercial component, yeah. Commercial is really hard, right? And I'm not familiar with this other project that you referenced, so I can't really speak to that, but I do know.
That's the wind farm one.
Yeah. I do know that the locality of contributed a significant amount of Section 8 to this project, so it is a big priority for them and part of their local planning initiatives, yes.
Great. Any other questions for Julie or Mike? If not, let's turn to Diana and make it happen. Oh, I'm sorry. Just a footnote. There's a map in the materials of a project in Main Street, Poughkeepsie, which threw me this morning when I was looking at
In the
this.
MIF, no, not in yours. I think it's at the end of the MIF memo before the HFA memo.
It's a very pretty picture of the Hudson Valley. And I thought, no, that's not where Henrietta is until I took a finer look. But somehow it that map snuck its way into the book materials.
I just want to know that you were reading.
Well, yeah, that's right. Could test us. All right, Diana, back to you.
Now before SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee are all in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Now before the HFA members and the HFA Finance and Project Committee are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for HFA and for the Finance Committee, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolutions adopted.
All right. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everyone. Let's go to number 4, A and B. A is a resolution of SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $2,570,000 HFA permanent first mortgage loan for the Magnolia Housing Scattered Site Project, which is in Erie, both Erie and Niagara counties. And Part B, resolutions of the HFA Finance and Program Committee, HFA members, recommending and authorizing the financing approval of $14,120,000 of maximum fixed rate or variable rate, tax exempt or maybe not, taxable bonds, and an amount not to exceed, last piece, $7,238,195 in HFA subsidy funds for this project, again, the Magnolia Housing Scattered Site Project in Erie and Niagara counties. Mike will start and to introduce us.
So this project involves the mod rehab of 4 scattered site projects for 96 units. Each of the 4 projects has 24 units. 32 of the units are covered under a project-based Section 8 app contract, and 61 units, the tenants in 61 units will have tenant-based Section 8 vouchers, colloquially known as sticky vouchers. Projects being developed by People Inc., which provides a variety of services to individuals and families with developmental disabilities. This is somewhat new for People Inc. The insured loan amount is $27,000 per unit, which equals 11% of the project's total development cost of $253,000 per unit. And the project would break even with a pro forma 10% vacancy rate or an 8% increase in pro forma operating expense.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Julie, you're going to do this, or?
Russell.
Oh, Russell will. Okay, great. Good morning.
Just a little background. Some of the materials refer to this project also as homestead scattered sites. Just a little clarification. The Olmsted Center for Site is the original owner of these buildings, soon to be previous owner. The Olmsted Center was originally founded in 1907 as the Buffalo Association for the Blind, incidentally changing their name to Olmsted, named after Dr. Elizabeth Pierce Olmsted in 1999. Dr. Olmsted was a pioneer for women in medicine. She graduated in 1939 as the first female ophthalmologist in Western New York. So that's where the name originated from. And the projects, these buildings were created with the aid of financing from our HTFC colleagues and the 9% tax credits to develop for visually impaired and physically disabled. Over the years, these affordable housing projects now also serve low-income families as well. The 4 properties are Austin Manor, located in Buffalo, Gratwick Manor, also in Buffalo, Haskell Stoveroff Apartments, that located in Cheektowaga, just east of Buffalo, and then Elizabeth Harvey Apartments, located in North Tonawanda in Niagara County. Each building is a low-rise, 2 stories. Each has 24 units for a total of 96 units in the development. The Olmsted Center has had difficulty in recent years being able to continue to manage and maintain these properties, rent levels restricting available revenue to address the wear and tear and the current capital needs for the buildings. They hired People Inc. As another nonprofit who specializes in services for the disabled in 2020 to manage the properties. Now People Inc. will fully acquire the buildings. They have created a single-purpose entity, Magnolia Housing, hence the change in the name from Olmsted Scattered Sites to Magnolia Scattered Sites. For this purpose, People Inc. will, in addition to being a service provider, also has experience in developing some affordable housing and have successfully done so, like I said, with the HTFC side in the past. By combining all 4 buildings together for financing, it achieves some cost efficiencies. We also had them apply and secure Section 8 project-based rental assistance, as Mike alluded to before, for 32 of the units to help stabilize the revenue. The project-based rental assistance means that they'll stick with the project, so if tenants come and go, the Section 8 stays with the building. So
That's why Mike calls them sticky vouchers.
Yes. So it's a lot easier to underwrite to revenue that we know that's going to be there. And, this will be secured through a 20-year HAP contract on all 4 buildings. The project is now in a position to be fully rehabilitated and made financially secure. So with this new financing and debt restructuring, these buildings at over $120,000 per unit will be substantially renovated, meet the agency's energy efficiency requirements for existing buildings by complying with our design guidelines and exceeding our moderate rehabilitation criteria. Energy efficiency measures include windows and appliances, LED lighting, everyone's favorite low-flow toilets, and new PTAC units for HVAC systems, water heaters, thermostats. The project is also expected to meet New York State Affordable Multifamily Energy Efficiency Program, otherwise known as AMEEP, for which they get reimbursed $115,000 at conversion. At the end of the day, this project will improve and preserve affordable housing for low-income families for another 40 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Russell. Great. Really interesting project or set of, projects. Questions for Russell, Mike, Julie, since she's sitting here?
I have a quick question. I was reading the scope, so I know it's going to become more energy efficient, and you're getting a PTAC. Are you decarbonizing the building completely?
No, not
Okay.
It's exceeding our mod rehab requirements, but not fully.
Just have my climate-friendly homes hat on, that's all.
Good question. Anything else? Great. Let's go to Diana.
Now before SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee, all in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Now before the HFA members and the HFA Finance and Program Committee are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for HFA and for the Finance Committee, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolutions adopted.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Russell. I need to just note for everybody, Betsy whispered to me a short while ago to let everyone who is in the Albany office, the Capitol, I'm thinking of Jesse and Chris and everybody else, know that the food has arrived and you're free to go in the back room here in the kitchen and pick up some breakfast snacks, okay? Item 5, resolution of the SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee, SONYMA Board approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $27 million HFA permanent first mortgage loan for another project named for great Western New York history, the Pan American Square project in Buffalo, Erie County. And Part B, resolutions of the HFA Finance and Program Committee, HFA members recommending authorizing finance rule of $45,100,000 of maximum fixed rate or variable rate tax exempt or taxable bonds and an amount not to exceed $9,325,000 in HFA shop subsidy funds, an amount not to exceed $12,434,035 in federal housing trust funds. And wait, there's more, an amount not to exceed $1,875,000 in clean energy initiative subsidy funds for the, again, Pan American Square project in Buffalo. Mike and Julie can do this one, I think.
So this project comprises the construction of 150 all low-income units plus 62,000 square feet of community space. Included within the 150 units are 100 supportive units. There are 20 units covered under an ESHI contract with New York State Department of Health. And there are 80 units that will be community residences operated under a license with the New York State Office of Mental Health. This is a somewhat unusual project and sort of a throwback to the old model in that New York State Office of Mental Health will sign a contract with DePaul for 100% of debt service for the full 30 years. So OMH will pay the approximately $2 million per annum in debt service for each of the next 30 years. Normally, the 62,000 square feet of community space would be of some concern. Because it's an awful lot of community space, but OMH is paying 100% of the debt service. The insured loan amount is $180,000 per unit, which equals 33% of the project's development cost, total development cost of $546,000 per unit. And actually, I don't have break-evens for this because OMH is paying 100% of the debt service.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Julie?
Actually, I should add that this is the 12th loan that we have insured, that we will insure for projects controlled by DePaul with total liability of $109,500,000. And of the 12 projects, 6 are HFA financed and 6 are CPC financed.
Okay, thanks. That's good.
Okay, so Pan American Square in Buffalo. So as Mike described, this is exciting for us for a number of reasons, and it's hitting a lot of really key goals in our housing plan. So as Mike described, there is a significant component of OMH debt service financed units here. And one thing that we're finding is that among older supportive housing projects, it can be very difficult to get capital into them, new capital. And so many of what they're called CRSROs that have existed for a generation are in disrepair. And so this, to my mind, is both new construction and in some ways preservation of supportive housing, in that 80 residents that are currently living in a broken down building are going to be able to move now into a brand new building in an integrated setting with other residents, including some residents supported by ESHI. It's also great to be able to be doing this with one of our most experienced supportive housing not-for-profit developers. They're, as Mike described, we have a number of projects with them. They've been operating in Rochester for over 60 years and are one of the most active and successful not-for-profit supportive housing developers, operators, and service providers in the region. It's also a great example of collaboration between the sister agencies. As supportive housing financing has evolved, it has posed new challenges and new opportunities. And so I see this as a real opportunity for us and OMH to support these vulnerable residents. The OMH residents are residents who have a diagnosis of serious mental illness, and I think ESHI also, which DePaul is expert in. That's their area. It's their wheelhouse. What else can I say? It's 150 units, as we noted. 100 units supportive. It's new construction. This project, the developer actually worked with us to go back and incorporate design features that would allow it to qualify for the climate energy initiative funding. So we were pleased that they were willing to work on that with us. So it will be reaching our standards. This will be an all-electric central hot water and heating distribution system, among a number of other features that are outlined in memo. Let me just talk quickly about the location, which was part of my notes here. Yes, location. So it's well located to serve the vulnerable population that will be living there. It is near two major thoroughfares with direct access to public transportation. It's in walking distance to the local metro public transit system and light rail. Also in easy walking distance to Consumer Square Mall, which includes stores like Target, GNC, Office Max, T-Mobile, grocery, etc., to meet folks' daily nutrition needs. And I think I will wrap up there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Could you tell us a little more about the sort of the SRO structure for something like this? Like, how big are the rooms, and do they have bathrooms, or is it?
Yeah.
What do you get in a building like this?
It's a good question. So I think, in a past generation of CRSROs, you would find some buildings, typology, where there would be shared bathrooms, things like this. That's no longer the case. So in new construction, they are studio units. Folks have their own bathroom. They have their own kitchenette area. I don't have all the notes on the condition of the existing structure,
right,
if it has communal bathroom or not, but certainly the new model is.
But it'll still be called a CRSRO, even if they're studio units. I mean, it's.
The financing program is called that,
right,
so I think we default to that. But
right,
when you look at the building and the experience of the tenants, it wouldn't be any different than any other new construction building that we were doing. Yeah, the CRSRO is sort of an older type model that has evolved over the years.
And they get kitchenettes in the apartments, even though there are 3 meals a day in a common cafeteria, right?
Well, that's also an interesting question. In the older model, often it would be, sort of communal food like this, prepared cafeteria style. Newer model is, also around services to help people be able to live more independently, right, including being able to cook for themselves and offering more of an independent lifestyle with support services.
Right.
So you mentioned that DePaul worked with you to redesign to reach to the electrification standard. Were they resistant or?
No.
Okay, good.
No, just took a little massaging, but they were,
And is the builder, is it Krista?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's Krista on this one. Krista Construction, yeah. It's the GC.
Yeah, I know I'm not on this particular board, but I did have just 2 quick questions. One, given the demographics of people who are going to be living there, I just don't see, I'm sure there is some way that people are receiving some type of 24-hour care and oversight of what they do, or they're living there independently?
So yeah, so this type of supportive housing is designed for folks who can live independently with services. However, there are service providers in the building, and 2 contracts for service provision. One under our HI program, and another that comes with the OMH.
So is that round the clock
program? Let me check to see. Yes. There's not a 24-hour on-site super, but there is access to security and on-site 24/7 security to assist residents in case of emergency, and the service providers provide an on-call person to be there for all hours.
Okay. All right, because when I'm seeing serious mental illness, and we read about this and study it at the college where I'm teaching as well. That typically requires round the clock, not just security if somebody breaks a window or something, but it's an illness. Any more so than if they were, terminal cancer patients, whatever it might be. So is there any way to look into that at any further? Or I'm not going to hold up this process right now, but it just seems to me that if you're talking about people who are in this category, in this demographic, that they need more than just somebody that goes home at 10 o'clock, as opposed to round the clock care of some sort.
Well, it's a great point, and of course, there's lots of sort of degrees of mental illness, types of mental
No,
illness,
yeah.
just like physical illness, right?
Yeah.
So.
But this, I'm sorry, but this particular category, serious mental illness, is not something that's just thrown around because people are, counting backwards or something like that. I mean, people have serious, there's serious concerns about harm to self and others, is the phrase that they use.
Right, and our supportive housing program and the providers who are in it, especially, we wouldn't be doing this with any old provider, right? DePaul is a highly experienced provider,
Okay.
and this is their specialization, is supporting folks with mental illness and permanent housing.
Okay.
So I absolutely hear what you're saying, and the support programs are designed in such a way to ensure that STED residents can stay safe and successfully and independently.
Okay.
And our colleagues at OMH and
So you're comfortable that the operators know what they're doing, in other words, right?
Well, I would just add to, I think, to Julie too, like OMH is really sort of the key sort of overseer of that piece of this, right? They're providing the contract to the provider to care for these individuals. So they sort of are the decider kind of in a way about the level of care and about the amount they're subsidizing and what that's providing. And so I think we are deferential to what the Office of Mental Health contracts with DePaul for as it relates to these individuals, because they're sort of like their clients.
Thank you.
But it's a fair question. It's just we're sort of a little
Thank you.
deferential to that.
And in the interest of time, just a second question. It has to do with the developer. And it's one of the things that, and I know we've been speaking about this already from the last meeting in terms of how do we get more participation by minority developers in these kinds of situations, as opposed, because without some either mandate or, with, direct directives, it's just not going to happen. I mean, why would Chris or anybody else say, yeah, we need to get a minority partner in with this? And so is that something that we can look into going forward?
Yeah, and I would say this is something that we address on all of our projects, this one included. So there are very specific goals for participation of minority women-owned businesses. And so they have submitted their plan to the agency. It's currently under review, and we won't close until we have approval that they are reaching the goals that the agency has set out.
Okay.
I'd also say, like in the supportive housing development world, I wouldn't say 100%, but almost every project that you will see funded through this board is going to be with a nonprofit. And obviously, there's a little bit of a tension's the wrong word, but a nonprofit and MWBE, right, cannot be the same thing by sort of definition. So at the request of the organizations that are the sort of supportive housing industry have made that request to us, and they at the funding level, so these contracts, whether it's for CRSRO or for ESHI, are only for nonprofits. So you're definitely going to see, I think, in the development of all these here and going forward, that they are almost exclusively nonprofits. So they're not, whether or not they're headed by, minority executive director, it doesn't, you're not going to see that in here, but you will see it to Julie's point on the development side, which is where the spend is, which is where we're sort of accountable and aim to overachieve as it relates to our dollars going into the project.
Okay,
But
well,
I just make that sort of developer distinction.
Obviously, that's something I would like to see that we can look into that further. Perhaps there's some changes that need to be made in order to facilitate that. But anyway, thank you for the presentation. And sorry for the interruption.
No, none whatsoever, Wallace. Thank you. Thanks, Julie, for answering that. Any other questions about this project in Buffalo? Yeah.
So one of the things I find fascinating about like very successful programs like this is they are actually like massive benefits to the local communities in terms of like Erie County having to write checks for homeless hotels and solving for this. And I appreciate the fact that this pilot, like this program has a pilot paying to the city of Buffalo. But my question is like, how much data are we capturing on how much actually economic benefit in terms of savings to the healthcare system, to the other system? Like, should we be thinking about how we partner with local governments to write checks into projects as opposed to projects writing checks out to local governments, given the benefit that these are providing overall? And it's the same thing with, kind of OMH. Like, is OMH quantifying how much this, by funding more of these projects, that it's actually saving them elsewhere in the state on service delivery, to perhaps accelerate this kind of work as a way of cost savings on other measures through the healthcare system, other mental health systems, whatever?
Yeah, I think, the question of housing is healthcare housing and healthcare being one and the same. It's a really important theme in the supportive housing world. We ourselves are not collecting this data, but many organizations are. So the Supportive Housing Network of New York, the Corporation for Supportive Housing, others that do a lot of data analysis about exactly this. The cost of someone with severe mental illness living on the street would normally receive services in an emergency room or a shelter, and these are all very expensive services, right? So a big part of gaining support for permanent housing is around this theme as housing as healthcare, right? Housing first, if you're stably housed, then you could start to deal with everything else that's happening. And also the overall cost savings, right? I don't have recent numbers, but there's this article from probably 15 years ago now that still gets passed around called $1 Billion Joe or something like that from the New Yorker, and it breaks down exactly this, right? Like the cost of permanent housing with support services for people with permanent disability versus the alternatives out there. So to your question about localities contributing, I think we see about the same level of participation that we see on other affordable housing. But in terms of addressing the issue and bringing down the cost of services to these individuals, it's been proven by many organizations and advocacy groups that it's a very cost-effective solution.
Great. Thanks, James.
Question.
Yeah.
Is housing conditional upon use of services?
No, that's interesting. So it's not. So people who live, and it's something very unique about sort of this generation of supportive housing, folks have a lease. They have all the same rights and responsibilities as any other tenant. You must follow the house rules, all of the things, right? Services are voluntary. So for example, you cannot be evicted if you don't show up to your group session that morning, right? The job of the provider is to help people be successful in their sort of service receiving, that's the right word. That's part of the job of this provider and why they're in there, right? To help people stay successfully housed and confront issues that they might be preventing them from staying successfully housed.
All right. Thank you, James Wallace. Anybody else? Great. Let's go to Diana.
Okay. Now before SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee and SONYMA boards are resolutions that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee and for SONYMA, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolutions adopted. Now before the HFA members and the HFA Finance and Program Committee are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for HFA and for the Finance Committee, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolutions adopted.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Let's go to item 6 on our agenda today. This is A and B, a resolution of the SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee and of the SONYMA Board approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $25,700,000 HFA permanent first mortgage loan for a project. We're going to come down to the Belmont section of the Bronx now. This is called Crotona Belmont Senior Housing in the Bronx. And Part B, resolutions of HFA Finance and Program Committee and the HFA members themselves recommending and authorizing the finance approval of $54,480,000 of maximum fixed rate or variable rate tax exempt or taxable bonds and an amount not to exceed $8,523,979 in HFA subsidy funds for this project. Again, the Crotona Belmont Senior Housing Project in the Bronx County. Again, back to Mike and then Julie.
So this project comprises the construction of 134 all low-income senior units, and all 134 units will be covered under a project-based Section 8 HAP contract. The project is being developed by SEBCO, which was organized in 1968 and has developed more than 6,000 units of affordable housing. The insured loan amount is $192,000 per unit, which equals only 26% of the project's total development cost of $724,000 per unit. So this is an expensive project, but it's also a Davis-Bacon project because of the Section 8 HAP contract. The project would break even with a 13% pro forma vacancy rate or a 22% pro forma increase in operating expenses.
Thanks, Mike. little banter here with the president and CEO and the chair about the legacy of Father Luis Gigante. This is SEPCO is, right, the Gigante organization. Ruth Ann was remarking that, when you're stuck in traffic on the elevated section of the Bruckner, if you're driving east and look to your left, you get C. The entire borough of the Bronx is rebuilt by Father Luis Gigante. But seriously, 6,000 units or something like that, it says in the
Yes.
Really and he just passed away. So quite a legacy, really very powerful reconstruction of the Bronx and of affordable housing in the Bronx. Let's go to Julie for her portion of this presentation.
Okay, so this is our second senior deal today, also new construction in the Bronx, as Mike described, by SEPCO, the Southeast Bronx Community Organization, longstanding community development organization in the South Bronx. This is an example, most of the senior housing that we do in New York City is in collaboration with HPD. So we, both contribute subsidy, HPD contributes Section 8. Though the deals are expensive due to prevailing wages, this is what I would call, again, truly affordable senior housing, in that if your income were to decline as you age, you do not risk losing your housing because the voucher will cover that. This is also interesting in that it takes advantage of a change to the New York City zoning resolution that happened probably 5 or 6 years ago now. It allowed for owners of senior housing under a prior generation called the HUD 202 program. Because of a lot of reasons, a lot of times these buildings had large parking lots that no one was using because you live in New York and you're over 62 and you're low income, so probably you don't have a car. So there was a change to the zoning resolution that allowed organizations such as SEPCO, who had owned these parking lots, to subdivide them and build new senior housing on them. So this project is taking advantage of that provision, and we're excited to be able to support that. 1/3 of the residents in this building will be referrals from the New York City shelter system and supported by a service contract through New York City HFA. Let's see, what else can I say about this one? This project is not taking advantage of our CEI program. However, they are building to Energy Star and HFA and reaching our HFA mandatory energy requirements via our design guidelines. They just were not able to stretch to CEI. The consultant and contractor are both regular participants in HFA projects. Rockabill and the J Pillar Group. And this one's been a little bit of a heavy lift to get across the finish line, so we are very excited to be bringing it to you today to request authorization for funding, and I am happy to answer any questions about this project.
Thank you, Julie.
Yes, I guess I'm giving away my age when I say this may sound like a broken record, since many people don't have records anymore. but again, it's the same, and you'll hear me say this again, I'm sure. I understand the notion with respect to nonprofit organizations being the developer, and my question earlier with respect to minority participation. But looking at the project team more closely, so we have the contractor. Okay, and so there's room there for some partnership with a minority-owned firm, and it's just not going to happen unless there is some directive from us. And I guess the question is just how do we make that happen? Because there's no impetus for J Pillar. This is J Pillar Jr., Pia Jr. Why would they do that unless there's some directive that they're going to do these kinds of things? And we're talking, obviously we've been sitting here for the last hour talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars going around, and I'm not hearing how we're going to see minority contractors get involved with this unless we have some way of looking to make that happen.
Well, their spend does have to go to MWBEs, right?
I'm sorry?
So the spend does have to go to MWBEs. So I hear your point of just sort of reinforce that in this one, I don't know what the total spend is, right? But if we look at the amount going out, that funding is held to our all those funds have to go 30% to MWB firms. So plumbers, electricians, right? You're seeing the contractor, but obviously there's 35 subs on any given building. So, we generally meet and in some cases obviously exceed the 30% is obviously our goal. So we do see that on you do see it on the spend. I guess you can't see it sort of in this memo.
And in the approval process, Wallace, as I think Julie was saying before, the developer has to demonstrate to the agency what he, she, they is going to do to meet or exceed the 30% contracting goal for MWBE spend. And so we approve this all kind of, they get the board approval here, makes the project move forward. But actually, the deal isn't closed until the staff here has seen that plan. In every single deal where there's state money, this is a directive not from us, from the governor. It happens as this agency, in our experience, it does better than 30%, much better, and performs better in this regard than most state agencies, frankly, if you look across state government. But so we don't see those details here, but the office here gets that presentation from the developer and has to be comfortable that that's going to happen. And then there are, there's liquidated damages, there's penalties. You probably know this, I'm sorry, because you had a meeting already this week, right, where you talked about this. And so there is also, lots of ways to enforce it on the developers and to keep an eye out, frankly, for bad actors, right? So an agency, someone who doesn't perform and doesn't meet the goals, doesn't come back to the agency and say, oh, I want to do it again, I'll do a better job this time, right? Like we can look at that and say, wait a second, put the brakes on it.
And we bring that to the board in
December and January. You'll see the plan for the upcoming year with the goals and the data on the construction that Ruth Ann and Ken are mentioning. You'll see all that in there, coming from our office of, I forget the name.
We're actually gonna, I think, rename it. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
But we, as I mentioned, I think last board meeting, we have a new woman who replaced Wanda Graham, who was the longtime head of the office. And so she'll come in December and introduce herself and also present all that data. So you can see it at the more granular level, the spend and the dollars, to your point about the, amount of subsidy.
I rarely quote Ronald Reagan, but I think the notion of trust but verify.
Yes.
And and again, I don't want to spend too much more time on it right now. And I know as board members, we're not going to be involved in operations and don't care to be. But we do want to see just how do we verify, because I've spent too much time working in this area over the years, and people will say they're doing X, and maybe and X turns out to be a shadow operation of one sort or another, or just it's not. It's always something that requires oversight, is my point. And I'm sure there's a mechanism within SONYMA right now to make that happen. I just don't know what that is. And that's, I guess, what I'm speaking to.
Actually, the agency doesn't let projects convert without doing verification. So you can't go from your construction phase to your permanent and get your tax credit equity in until the agency actually does that verification process.
Okay.
And there's liquidated damages.
Yeah.
I mean, the law that was passed a few years ago really was, Professor Ford was looking to make sure to cover all of these loopholes. And these agencies take that very seriously.
Okay.
And you'll see it at the board level.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great.
I have one quick question. $724,000 a unit is like a huge number, and I know it's Davis-Bacon, I get that. I just wonder, pre-pandemic, how much less do you think that number would be? Because
Pre-inflation.
well, right. So first it was, the pandemic and all the disruption in the market and the cost of the supply chain and all that. Now it's also inflation. So I'm wondering if that's a short, compressed time. I just don't know how much costs have gone up. We've seen it too, obviously at CPC, but I've never seen a number this.
I know, and I know. I see it and it kills me. And I think, the projects that are the most expensive, I think, that come through my shop are these downstate Davis-Bacon deals. Our contribution to them is actually reasonable because HPD is coming in with a lot of subsidy on these things. So that's sort of how we balance. It's also our way to get what I would say is truly affordable senior housing in New York City. Now, to your question about the cost increases, it's hard for me to know where to start measuring from. We know generally costs are going up. I can say that on this project and all three projects I presented today, actually, The impact of the rates from last quarter to this quarter opened up about $500,000 gap per unit. And then, different scenarios in construction. So I can speak to that specific issue. Now, insurance, all of the other things, we are seeing it, and we don't know the full impact yet.
I would add too, and because this also gave me a little bit of a flutter. But however, it has a huge first mortgage, right? So the project-based contract allows us to have a 200,000 a unit first mortgage, which is very unusual and very high for us. So that's great. And the tax credit equity on here is also sort of much larger, just by by virtue of their syndicator. So the actual, from our perspective, what we fund here is within the norm of everything else that we fund. It's just that these other sources, and the debt one is a good one, right, are making up kind of the gap for what I agree is a high per unit, but it isn't sort of impacting our budget in that way.
Yeah, and on the front end, capital costs are up, but also on the operating side.
Yes.
I mean, M&O is way up, insurance.
I should note, we had hoped to bring this one last time and it wasn't ready. And part of the reason it wasn't ready is because they had to go back and do some value engineering. So we did work really hard with this team to understanding that even for a deal like this, the costs were high.
One question, I just like looking at the map. I mean, obviously, given the number of units we're doing here, not the map, the building. I mean, are there opportunities like with this to be like go bigger developer, like buy the lots next door, buy the lots down the street, buy the parking lot across the street, and push them to create economies of scale and say like, like this isn't big enough with what you're thinking, given that like you're gonna have cranes and all this stuff in the area. Like, should we be like doing more?
It's hard prevailing wage. Well, there's a million things I could say to that, James, but I would say that for this project, this is land that the developer already owned, and one of the only reasons we could get to it because there wasn't a huge acquisition, quite frankly. So, I think, yes, in some cases, in other cases, I don't know anything about this adjacent parking lot or who owns it or what it would mean for them to try to acquire.
Yeah,
I don't think it's the developer that doesn't want to go bigger.
No, I know. I mean, but like, I'd put in more subsidy to be like, go acquire the lots down the street.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on this project? Oh, I'm sorry, James, please.
1/3 you said is referral from New York State shelters?
New York City shelter.
Right. The other 2/3 is their cost per unit for the individual themselves. What is considered affordable in this one?
So because all the units will have Section 8 on them, a project-based contract on the building, essentially that means that you can qualify as a resident, I believe up to 50% of AMI, although the vast majority are living around 30 AMI. So the vast majority of folks coming into this building will be on Social Security only, let's say, which is around 30% of AMI in New York City. So you could qualify if you're earning more than that, but there's basically no, you can have as low of income as.
You can have no income.
You can have no income and you could still be secure in your housing because the voucher is going to cover that rent, right? So, so to answer your question, you can qualify up to 50 AMI, but there's no floor. So what happens is when folks are coming out of shelter, they're coming out with their services in place, right? That's part of what the shelter does is get them in their benefits. And then part of the services that happen in the building is to ensure that tenants can maintain their benefits to pay their tenant portion here, which is somewhere around $200 monthly.
200 monthly?
Okay. For the lowest income.
It's like a set amount. It's like a shelter allowance, right? It's a public assistance shelter allowance, so it's not. It's like fixed amount.
213, 226. It's been like that forever.
It's like a dictated amount. Yeah.
Paid through DSS?
Paid through their public assistance. There's sort of an amount they get to pay for shelter in the public assistance payment. That's $213 a month, and that's what they pay. Is what they sort of a pass through in a way. Okay. And for some people, right, they're using that to pay in the market in this case, and they may have to pay more from somewhere. In this case, they just pay the shelter allowance.
Okay.
Right. So say your income is $15,000 a year and you're on services only, Social Security only. 213 or 226, something like that goes to your rent, and the rest of that is paid for by the voucher. And even if you were to lose your services, your voucher would still be available because it's with the building.
Okay. Indefinitely.
Under a 20-year contract.
20 year.
Mhm. That's right.
Same thing with the 6-year renewal.
How do they have?
The HAP contracts are subject to annual appropriation. They're 20-year contracts, and I think we've rarely ever seen a contract not, if they go to HUD and renew it, HUD, in the end of the 20 years, they generally are getting.
This is what HUD does now. They don't do capital financing. They provide vouchers.
Right.
So this is the way the federal government is engaged in housing at this point, is making these vouchers available to be leveraged, essentially. Not so much bricks and mortar. Past era.
Great. Anything else, James?
No.
All right. Very good. Let's go to Diana.
Now before SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee and SONYMA Board are resolutions that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Mortgage Insurance Committee and for SONYMA, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolutions adopted. Now before the HFA members and the HFA's Finance and Program Committee are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for HFA and for the Finance Committee, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolutions adopted.
Thanks, everybody. Let's go to number 7. This is just HFA action. And thank you to our presenters, Russell and Julie and Mike. This is number 7 is a resolution authorizing a small building program loan in an amount not to exceed $2,886,929 for the Seneca apartment project, which is in Geneva in Ontario County. And Adeline?
But hi everyone, not actually Madeline.
You don't sound like Madeline.
Introducing this one today. This is Burke, and I'll be presenting this in her stead. This is a smaller preservation project in the Finger Lakes region for a development known as the Seneca Apartments that's operated by the Geneva Housing Authority. It's a request to use just under $2.9 million in small building participation loan program funds for the moderate rehab of a 9-story, 50-unit apartment building in downtown Geneva that serves low-income seniors and persons with disabilities. The building, which is the tallest in downtown Geneva and therefore benefits from some substantial commercial income from rooftop cell tower leases, was built in 1982 and will be using the funding to complete short and long-term capital needs identified in a recent physical needs assessment. And these include updating the apartments and common areas, all new Energy Star appliances, and some Section 504 improvements. This project currently has a Section 8 HAP contract covering all 50 units, and the rents under the contract are approximately 53% AMI, with tenants paying no more than 30% of their income toward their share of rent. The project also benefits from a recently approved RPTL 420A exemption from real estate taxes, although there is an annual payment to the municipality for the use of 12 parking spaces in adjacent municipally owned parking. The total development cost is just over $3.7 million, about $74,000 per unit. CPC will be providing a $700,000 construction loan, which will convert to the senior permanent loan. The PLP subsidy here is a little under $58,000 per unit, which is well below the new $100,000 per unit maximum for rehabs at this affordability level. Due to the advantageous downtown location, residents enjoy regular bus service with a stop at the project, as well as close walking proximity to amenities such as banks, pharmacies, social services, and retail stores. The building renovation helps advance objectives in the city's DRI-approved strategic investment plan, and the agency's investment will help preserve these 50 affordable units for years to come. So for that reason, we're recommending approval of this request.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Any questions on this project in Geneva?
I just want to know where I'm going to abstain.
Right.
Okay.
I'm going to use the ladies' room too.
Okay.
And feel free, and I was really, it's true, there's a platter of food back there, thanks to Lil, so feel free to get a snack. Okay. Any other questions on, who knew Geneva? You knew this. I don't think I remember that Geneva had a public housing authority.
Yeah. There's a lot of housing authorities.
Great. Well then, Dinah, let's do the honors.
Okay. Now before the HFA members is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for HFA, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'll note that Sadie McGowan recused herself from a decision here. The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
All right, good. Thank you very much. We have an AHC item, which is number 8, a resolution authorizing an award of grant funds. This is detailed in the materials. Diana, you want to make it? Any questions anybody have? If not, we'll just go to Diana.
Okay. Now before AHC is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for AHC, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. All right. Well, the last two items for this portion of our meeting, at least, are 9 and 10, and they're informational. 9 is the current agency procurements in the lobbying restricted period, which we do every month. And 10, Mortgage Insurance Committee activity report for the month of October. That's in the materials. If you have any questions, Mike can help you with that for sure. But if there aren't any questions, for now, we can say there are no further items on the agenda today for SONYMA. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Yeah, I'd say I hate to interrupt. I guess I am interrupting, but just briefly.
You raised your hand.
Yes, it did. I was really interested, obviously, in seeing the variety and scope of the projects that the agencies are involved with here. I couldn't help but notice, of course, that of all of the projects with all of the tens of millions of dollars that's going through, that I only saw two projects that were in the 5 boroughs of the city of New York. And as I said, I'm all in favor of upstate development for sure, and just pleased as when I had the opportunity to do so to actually establish the Buffalo office of SONYMA. So my bona fides are there for the upstate, but this just happens to be the month where New York City is just not in the mix, and the next time around we'll see some further balance. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there's sort of a natural sort of ebb and flow of projects geographically around the state over the course of what's usually 11 board meetings. But we do on the HFA 4% deal side, we do generally 4 large transactions a year. So you generally see them grouped probably in 4 of the board meetings out of the 11. So.
But the SONYMA project volume that
the MIF, on the MIF multifamily?
Yeah, I mean, is there seasonality to it, or is it feels kind of random, right? Like this month we have X number of projects in the city, Y number upstate, some on Long Island, sometimes.
We look at it at a macro level.
You guys look at it year to year, right?
You would see them coming to the board in, like this, like you see 3 or 4 in, I think our January or February board meeting, I forget which one, we're probably going to have about 9 projects come through. So sometimes there's 9, sometimes there's 4, sometimes they're all rest of state, sometimes they may be predominantly New York City. You'll see over the course of the year, you'll see the distribution, but not necessarily in any one board meeting.
To Wallace's question, if you can remind me, Ruth Ann, when is there sort of an annual report for SONYMA so you could see the whole picture and the distribution of the projects? January. Okay. So in January, I knew it happened sometime. I couldn't remember when. So we'll get the full annual picture, and then you can get a better handle, because it does. Every meeting is different, because all these projects have their own unique timelines.
I understand that.
They see the big picture.
Of course, New York City is just the biggest player in whatever context we want to think about in terms of just population and need and so on. So it's like 10-2 or 8-2 or whatever it was, just seemed to be out of balance, even given what you're saying about the cyclical nature of these things. I understand that, but I would just think that at every iteration, we would see New York projects to a greater extent, because it also, again, goes back to what I've mentioned before. When we look at the demographics, the demographics of upstate are obviously very different than what we see here in New York City, and the New York City is a I guess the expression is a minority-majority entity at this point, and will always be that for the foreseeable future. And obviously, we want to see that reflected in the activities of the organizations going forward. So it's a matter of comment. I don't think there's anything to act on, and I'll look forward to seeing the January report, and I'm sure we'll have further dialogue with respect to that. I just would hope that that's kept in front of mind as we go forward, though.
I do want to point out, though, we do a lot of work across the state, and Syracuse, Rochester have some of the highest poverty rates in the country, much higher than New York City. So they're smaller, but there are really deep concentrations of deep poverty there. So there aren't that many resources. New York City has lots of other resources through HPD and through the city itself to address housing, but upstate doesn't necessarily have that either. So
There's also big scale differences, right? When we're doing
Yeah.
things upstate, you're often seeing 50-unit projects, and we get to New York City, you're seeing 250-unit projects, right? So sort of one project can have a different impact, obviously.
I've spent the last, November, 5 months working with the New York panel that the governor and mayor set up. And front of mind were two things, housing and education. Okay, so we have some plans with respect to education. Housing continues to be, my point is, I understand perfectly what you're saying about the crisis in, other parts of our state. But let it be clear that we have a very serious housing crisis here in New York. It just looks different, perhaps. But it is definitely a concern. So it's not something to argue, obviously. It is, it's a matter of just how do we, just have a more holistic approach. I guess that's what we're looking for. So,
Great.
Are
Thank
there
you.
project deadlines? Are there project deadlines in place? Like certain projects have to be in by a certain period of time in order for them to be reviewed?
Oh, well, certainly people have to sort of apply and give us time to go through our process, and we have to get them in our queue, right? Because we are lining projects up, 6 or 12 months before they're going to close. They're coming in and talking to us. So it takes a long time to get to this day for all these projects for a variety of reasons, not just that they're buying sites, they're permitting them, they're designing them, but then also they come in for financing, they've got to get their bank, their syndicator. So they have a lot of natural deadlines. And then we just obviously have our own sort of board deadlines and those types of
aren't
things.
you also somewhat subject to HPD in New York City because you can't really do deals without their support? Is that fair?
We do some deals without them, but we do a lot of deals with them. So we also are operating on they need to be ready, we need to be ready. They generally close deals in June and December, are sort of there to sweet spots of some deals. You see a little more volume those 2 times a year to reflect the city's.
is there something, I'm sorry.
And then the other thing we're thinking too, remember, like on the private activity volume cap, you spend a ton of time coordinating with the city because the city has its own housing finance agency itself, which does a lot of this. So like Ruth Ann spends a ton of time coordinating and like you guys getting the because there's only so much private activity volume cap to support all the multifamily development. So it's actually already getting carved up. So what you're seeing is kind of the secondary impact of the fact that the city's already getting a ton of the resources. And like we at the state have actually sent a bunch of like resources to the city to support, done some of the NYCHA stuff to do it, where asked to put capital in to support kind of those initiatives. But the problem is that the challenge for the upstate communities is they don't have an HTC.
Right.
They don't have a finance agency to come in and support a lot of it. So this is where the state has to be, you'll see the presence more important because there aren't the other resources that are available outside of New York City.
Well, I don't have eyebrows apparent enough to arch, so I can't do that. But I understand what you're saying. But New York City has I don't know what order of magnitude more of issues to deal with when we're talking about housing, and it is in all 5 boroughs. So again, I don't think it's a back and forth with respect to that. I understand that. And my question was just going to be: is there more that HPD could be doing with SONYMA at this point? Because we'll take that up with HPD.
I mean, SONYMA insures some HPD loans, but HDC, the city, also has this entity called REMIC, which is the city's insurer. So they do most of their stuff through REMIC and only come to us for things that they need.
So again, could they be doing more with SONYMA?
I don't think so. We're both limited by volume cap. There's only what's now $2.3 billion in the state. And between us and HTC, we're spending almost every penny of that, but for some IDA issuances that we don't control. So we are mostly capped by the federal volume cap limit.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, which we're arguing to get lifted so we can do more. Trying.
Well, very good. Some helpful questions at the end here. And again, reminder that the Morgan District Committee report is there in the materials and people can see Mike if they have questions. If there isn't any other business or any further questions, we'll turn to Diana who can close out the SONYMA meeting for this morning.
Assuming the first and second previously entered for SONYMA, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motion is carried. The meeting is adjourned.
Great, thanks, everybody. Please note, and if not, you'll get an email from Lil to this effect, that the next SONYMA board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 15th at 9 o'clock right here. And so.
And I think we sent the board meeting schedule for next year.
That's right. That's very helpful. Thank you for doing that. So thank you to all of our SONYMA board members. And, you know, there was a little side deal here I had with Wallace because he's got to get to class, and I think you should be able to do that.
Okay. My students would be very happy for me not to be here.
Yeah, you can blame it on us. We didn't have a big enough agenda today to keep Professor Ford from the class.
You'll hear from them.
Yeah, I bet. All right, so we're going to move to some items considered by the Housing Trust Fund Corporation, and these are in the Housing Trust Fund board book. It's a separate board book. Number one is an approval of the minutes of the last meeting, which was October 13th. Those minutes shall be deemed approved, absent corrections from members or directors. Everybody good with the minutes of the October meeting? Thank you very much. Two, a resolution authorizing community development block grant housing program awards, and I think Crystal's going to do this. She's been waiting patiently to make this presentation. Good morning, Crystal.
Good morning. Before I begin, I just wanted to mention that there are 4 separate CDBG items on the agenda today, and while it may be a little bit confusing, I just wanted to note this because they're in separate procurements or funding rounds, and that's why they're all issued as separate items. So the first item is for our annual competitive housing round. HCR makes $10 million in CDBG funds available in an annual competitive funding round for housing activities. We've received 31 applications requesting over $13 million in funding for owner-occupied rehab, down payment assistance, and manufactured housing replacements. We're recommending 24 awards totaling $10.4 million in CDBG funding for approval by the board. The full list of recommendations is in the board materials. Happy to answer any questions from the members.
Thanks, Crystal. Any questions for Crystal on this? Diana, let's make it happen.
Now before the HTFC members is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HTFC board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Let's not let Crystal go too far. She's got number 4, a resolution authorizing community development block grant CARES Act and a housing assistance awards.
3 or 4?
What we did? Did I skip?
Did we do?
Oh, Crystal, I apologize. I went too far. You know, let's do 3. Let's go backwards and do 3. This is a resolution authorizing community development block grant, economic development, and micro enterprise awards, a different type of grant. So I'm sorry to skip ahead like that. Let's go back to 3. Crystal, thank you.
Thank you. The CDBG Economic Development Program funds are one of the items that you generally hear from me on monthly. We make $10 million available in CDBG funds on an open round basis for economic development activity. The awards run through units of local government and then provide assistance to businesses, basically in exchange for creating or retaining jobs. This month, the Office of Community Renewal is recommending 3 awards totaling $580,000 in CDBG economic development funding for 3 applicants. Full details are provided in the board memo, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the members.
All right, thank you. Item 3, any questions on item 3? If not, let's do it. Diana,
Now
please.
before the HTFC members is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HTFC board, all in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Now we can go to my favorite. Number 4, resolution authorizing community development block grant CARES Act and housing assistance awards. Back to Crystal.
Again, we've been advancing CARES program awards monthly, and this is the latest. We're administering $127 million in CDBG CARES Act funding. This month, the Office of Community Renewal is requesting approval for 1 new CARES award, 5 amendments for existing awards, and a new CDBG award for farm worker housing. 2 of the amendments are to support cost increases on existing construction projects, and 3 of the amendments are to expand small business assistance programs that were already funded with the CARES Act funding, but they are oversubscribed. I will just note on this, we just did a roll-up of the activity, and we have funded small business programs in many parts of the state. Over $20 million has gone into small business assistance, and we've assisted over 500 businesses to date with this CARES Act funding. So we're excited to put some of the remaining uncommitted dollars into these grants to allow them to continue their work. So the Office of Community Renewal is also requesting, we're requesting approval to award over $4 million in CDBG CARES funds and $2.2 million in CDBG funds for the farm worker housing project. Full details are in the board memo. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Crystal. Any questions? All right, Dana, let's do it.
Now before the HTFC members is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HTFC board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Let's move to number 5, a resolution authorizing community development block grant, public infrastructure, public facility, and community planning awards. Thank you in advance. Crystal.
Thanks. Each year since 2011, HCR has participated in the state's Regional Economic Development Council and Consolidated Funding Application process. This year, OCR is recommending approval of 21 projects totaling over $23 million in CDBG funding. These projects are for sewer and water infrastructure, public facilities, and community planning or technical assistance activities. This year has been a bit of a change. There won't be a single consolidated CFA award announcement. Most of the agencies are making individual announcements, so we're a little bit early this year. While they traditionally come out in December, so we're eager to notify the grantees of these awards. Full details are in the memo, and I'm happy to take any questions from the members.
James has a question.
How, on the infrastructure side, how much are you working with folks on like climate resiliency and using these dollars to support sort of de-risking communities through redeploying as they're working in some of these fields?
Sure. There are some limitations to it. So the CDBG funding can only be used in some portions of the state. Our CDBG funds are only for smaller communities that do not receive their own allocations from HUD. So only a portion of the state is eligible to apply for the funding. And the CDBG funds need to go into communities or neighborhoods that are primarily low and moderate income. So it's not a fully open pool of funding. There are just restrictions on the types of activities that can be funded for these. However, that's certainly part of what's considered within eligible projects. Our team of CDBG staff members work with other state agencies such as EFC and DEC on a co-funding panel. So there's always communication and coordination on projects as they're developed and coming together and considering how the funding sources are working and moving together.
All right.
Got an outside question.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Quick question for you. For the community block grants, are they designed for hamlets or are they required to have a zip code in order to receive and apply for funding?
They need to go through units of local government. So that's correct. The hamlet itself would not be eligible to apply, but the town or village that it falls within would be eligible to.
Sounds like a Long Island question.
It is.
Right.
Hamlet,
Right. So only the
Townville,
municipality.
Yeah.
It's also a Westchester question.
Yeah. Lots of units of local
Again,
government.
Again, I would mention that the New York State CDBG funds are a bit limited, right? So many communities in Westchester County, Suffolk, and Long Island are not eligible to participate in the New York State CDBG program because the counties and larger cities receive their own allocations.
All right, so it goes to the county. Yeah. Great, thank you, Crystal. Any other questions? And thanks, James, for that. If not, let's turn to Diana.
Now before the HTFC members is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HTFC board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
We'll go to number 6, and again for Crystal to present, a resolution authorizing New York Main Street Awards.
Thank you. The New York Main Street program has also been running through the CFA process since 2011. This year, the Office of Community Renewal is recommending 21 awards totaling $5.2 million. The allocation for the New York Main Street program is just $4.2 million in the budget annually, but we are pulling in older recaptured funds from prior year awards to supplement this list. Full details on the projects are described in the memo, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So I just had more of a comment than a question, but the Main Street program is transformative for some of these smaller places. And so there's, almost 3 times the demand than we're able to award. And I just wanted to wonder out loud, I guess, with Dan, if there's ways to get more money into this program, because it has traction and it really does stimulate a tremendous, if you look at New Rochelle, 25 years ago, they got their, or 20, maybe not even that, 15 years ago, they got some of the first Main Street awards that really helped set the table. And New Rochelle is not just because of the Main Street program, but it really helped stimulate a lot of activity there. So I just wonder if we can address the demand.
Jesse?
I'll
let you go first.
Look at the variety of demands that are in various housing programs and see what sort of opportunities there are for investment sort of in the scope of the overall capital plan. We certainly understand the importance and value in this program. It's just sort of it's always about sort of the availability of resources and prioritization.
Understood.
But we hear you. It's a great, we'll work. We can, work with that this year.
Thanks, Jesse, and thanks, Sadie, for the comment. Anybody else? All right, Diana.
Now before the HTFC members is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HTFC board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
All right, thank you very much, Diana, and a big shout out and thanks to Crystal for presenting all 5 of those items. It seems like 6. Thank you very much, Crystal. Thanks, everybody. 7 is a resolution approving the seeker documentation and classification of a project called Reynolds Way Apartments, and I think Heather has this one.
Good morning. Today I'm recommending the Reynolds Way Apartments project be classified as an unlisted action and that a negative declaration be made pursuant to the New York State seeker law and regulations. Environmental staff have reviewed the project and found no unmitigated adverse environmental impacts. The project is the proposed rehabilitation and reuse of 4 buildings to create 42 units on East Church Street, Academy Place, and William Street in Elmira, New York. The funding sources are state and federal housing trust fund and tax credits. 9% tax credits. Unless there are any questions, at this time I request the board classify the project as an unlisted action and issue a negative declaration.
All right, thank you, Heather, for that. Any questions for Heather on this project or her request? Just checking with Joyce, who's always interested in seeker actions. Joyce is not raising her hand, so I think we're okay.
Quiet today.
She's quiet today. It's all right, Very good. Let's...
I think I need to abstain from this one as well.
Is it CPC financing in this one? Yeah.
Well, no, but we're involved in the woods at Pauling. I don't know, Alex, if that means.
That's fine. I think we have a quorum without your vote.
All right. Well, if we have the quorum, Diana, let's move ahead.
Now before the HTFC members is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HTFC board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I note for the record that Sadie McGowan is abstaining vote here.
Great.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you, Diana. Thanks, Sadie. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Heather, for the presentation. The remainder of the agenda items are informational. There's materials you can look at or you probably have already. There are no more presentations unless requested by members. And these include a review of seeker concur summaries, a review of type 2 seeker summaries, a review of payroll processing contracts with automatic data processing, otherwise known as ADP, a review of the contract with Enhanced Business Systems, Inc., EBS, for accounting system automation services, and a review of agency procurements and contracts in the lobbying restricted period. So that's all in the materials. And if there are no questions about that, we can turn to Diana for motions to, and seconds to adjourn this morning's meetings. Diana?
Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA, AHC, and HTFC boards, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motions are carried. The meetings are adjourned.
Thank you all very much. Note that the next HFA AHC board meetings are scheduled for Thursday, December 15th, 2022, about a month hence at 9 o'clock. Everybody, have a great day and a wonderful Thanksgiving. We'll see you next month. And thank you, Diana. Well done.
It's not Alex, but whatever.
Hey, it will be. No, too far away, right?
Too much to do. Yeah, I know. We're gonna go in for 2 or 3.
It's just to bring down.
Our first mortgage products ready in May.
To do that nationally.
Yeah.
So one question.